So we have a topic that many have been curious about, even myself. I've wanted to do back-to-back comparison with these two for quite some time. But 128, 136, and or 129, 137. The only difference is the pitch of the track. But essentially we want to know what the difference is with the lengths. How does it feel in the bumps? How does it feel around the corners? All those different things. And to backtrack a little bit, you know, I started off running 121s. Everyone kind of had 121 sleds. And then I was an early adopter to the 128 because I thought it felt like it went through the bumps a little bit straighter. It didn't swap as much in the snowcross, as well as maybe a little bit better for the hole shots. But I would go back to a 121 for backflipping because I thought the 121 backflip better. And lo and behold, this past year, I was backflipping a 136 and thought it flipped great. So that is a topic that is up for discussion. But today we're gonna try to figure out what works better on the trail and crossover between XCR 128 and XCR 136. So we've got a couple different sleds. We have a 136 XCR 650, a 128 XCR 650, and then we have an 850 128 that we're going to be doing some of the bump stuff with. Part of the reason for that is because I forgot to do the bumps when I did the original one. So we're going to use the 128 XCR 850 in place just for the bumps solely so we can get that test. I didn't think through the bumps the 850 to 650 would be much difference, and they all have the same 135 Cobra. So we're going to get into it and we're going to find out which sled works better and where. Let's do this. Long sweeping turns. So first thing I notice is the 136 definitely doesn't have much give in the back end coming around that turn. You really feel like the 136 is locked in, and with that you get a little bit more of that pushing sensation in the turns. So I was relying a little bit more on the brake to kind of plant the front end. The 128 on the other hand has a little bit more give, and with that you can kind of pivot around those turns easier and you have less push going around the turn. So in general, 136 a little more locked in, 128 back end has a little bit more give to pivot around these turns. Have a good one. What day is it?
Tuesday.
It's pretty active Tuesday in Longville. That's 3 snowmobiles already we've seen. Pivoting into turn. So what that means is essentially you're coming around a sweeper, you get to a point where you need to get more turn angle. So what you do is you grab a little brake and you let the back end come around to get you around that turn. Oftentimes it's because the front end doesn't have traction, or you know, you realize, hey, this turn actually gets tighter, it's a progressive turn and you need to get it squared up. So in this example, you know, I felt the 136 definitely, the back end is more locked in, so it doesn't like to pivot as well. Where the 128, you're able to kind of pivot around that turn, you know, give it a little quick tail slide, get it the direction you're going. So in general, the 128, the back end definitely is looser feeling, or easier to break loose. The thing that I noticed the most about the 128 is it just feels really nimble. It just feels a lot quicker moving than the 136 in the turns. But the 136 is more forgiving, meaning it will hold you a little bit more so you don't have like an out of control tail slide in the turn. So I just think in general that 136, the extra little bit of length, it just kind of reminds me of like a pickup. You know, you got a long truck, you go to tail slide, it's way easier to control than if you got a short little car with a short wheelbase. That one wants to spin right around. And that's like, in a very tame version, that's what the 128 and 136 is. The shorter one pivots easier, the 136 is a little bit harder to get it around. Ditch banging. So ditch banging to me is jumping road approaches, side hilling, carving, and also ripping wheelies. So 136, definitely side hills better. I think it's a better carving machine. Also the wheel end, because we have only 1.35 lug track, The longer track definitely has more traction, so I was cheating it off a road approach, but still it had more traction to pull the front end. So definitely had the advantage on the 136. And jumping wise, you know, they both jumped fairly similar. You know, the road approach was it's not like the perfect road approach, but we were getting a little bit of pop off of it. And in general, they both felt fairly similar. So as far as ditch banging goes, I would say advantage goes 136 in regards to side hill and wheeling. 128, 136 through the bumps. I would say surprisingly through the big bumps, I felt like the 136 was a little bit smoother through it than the 128. And the smaller bumps, I guess you don't notice it as much. They both go through them pretty well, but the 136 just felt a little bit more plush compared to the 128. And I don't know if that's the length. You know, everyone talks about bridge and bumps, but it did feel like it was just a little bit more plush through it. And maybe it's the, you know, the extra length. Maybe there's extra leverage on the shocks and springs to allow it to be a little bit more plush. But either way, I would give bumps to the 136. One thing to keep in mind on the 136 and the 128 is the 136 does have a tipped up rail in the back. You can kind of see it here. You can see how the lugs are off the ground a little bit. And it pretty much goes from the pivot point with the scissor arm is where it starts tipping up. It's not a lot, but it does help mimic a shorter rail, so you can kind of pivot a little bit better in the turns. And it kind of allows the front end to be a little bit lighter. Where on the 128, you can see here, this is a pretty much flat rail all the way to the back, like your traditional rails are. One thing you have to keep in mind with the 128 is because the tunnel is shorter, the further back pegs, the second row pegs, some of the attachments won't fit. Now this Brandt bag here, this one fits on just perfect, but it's literally right up against the tail light. On the other hand, when you use the rack, this rack here, it goes in the front, but it just literally bottoms out on the tail light, so you're not able to use it on the 128. Whereas on the 136, you're able to clip this thing right in and it has ample room. 128, 136 conclusion. I think they both have their place. I think the 128 is the trail rocket. I mean, I think being as nimble feeling as it is, I just feel like I'm going fast. I don't know if I actually am, but I feel like I'm ripping that thing, and it feels easier to maneuver around. So I really like riding the 128 on the trail, especially with that little bit more give in the turn. The back end kind of pivots, helps you get around those turns. On the other hand, the 136, you know, it's such a well-rounded machine. It's very forgiving. That's the word that I always use with the 136. It doesn't make any exaggerated movements. You come into the turn, the back end doesn't slide out real quick. It just kind of keeps chugging along. The thing I love about the 136 is ditch banging. In the ditches, you're able to hold that side. If you get on a steep side hill, the back end, because of the extra length, it kind of holds a little bit better than the 128. And with the smaller lug tracks, the 135s that are on both these sleds, the extra length of the track helps you get that wheelie up. So for ditch banging with this trim, with the shorter lug track, the 136 is definitely my choice. You can compensate the 128 by putting a taller lug track. I've had 1 3/4 inches on that before in years past, and I really enjoyed that sled because it was able to wheelie up. But in general, both these sleds are great and they have their place in snowmobiling. So hopefully that helps you determine which sled is for you. If you guys have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below. And in the meantime, you guys take care.